Hello, and welcome to a video walkthrough of the brainstem. And I'm using a 3D model of the brainstem that I found on Sketchfab for this. I'm going to hide the annotations though. And so this will allow us to look at the brainstem and the midbrain and some other structures as well as the cranial nerves coming off of it. So that's what I'm going to kind of do. Unfortunately, my tablet battery is low, so I'm stuck in laptop mode, and so I will do a little bit of drawing, but my drawing ability will be limited because of that. So that's kind of the deal. So let's zoom in a bit. No, not quite that much. And just look at the lateral view of this. So what you'll notice is that there is a structure up at the top here with some gyri and sulci on it, but it's small, which means that it's not even close to the entire cerebrum. What this is the insula. So the insula is a lobe that usually hides between the bottom part of the frontal lobe and the top part of the temporal lobe. It's in a crevice, but you can't see it unless you were to like retract and hold the tissue away. But in this picture, because all of that tissue is gone, the cerebral hemispheric tissue, you can see the insula. Okay, so for general regions, the midbrain and my handwriting's a little sloppy because of that, not tablet mode, so apologies there. The midbrain is this connector area, so you can see that there's some cranial nerves coming off of it, and there's some other structures on there that I'll show you. And then the brainstem is all this stuff. And then we'll see that this is the pons, and then this part is the medulla oblongata. So we're going to start with the midbrain and we'll just kind of work our way down. So at the back of the midbrain, so here we have the posterior aspect of it. What you're going to see, and unfortunately this is blocked by this top structure, but you can still see it peeking out. And I'll zoom in a little bit and tilt this too, so that might help with the view of it. And let's tilt you this way. Not quite that much. There, okay. So this is the posterior aspect of the midbrain, kind of looking up from below, and you're going to see these little lumps up here, and then right below them, these little lumps. So all together, 2 per side, as a group, we call these the corpora quadrigemina. Corpora means bodies, and quadrigemina means 4 twins. So this name means the bodies of the 4 twins. So this is twin 1, 2, and twins 3 and 4. And I can't draw 4 today, apparently. Let's try that again. So the top two twins are the superior colliculi. So singular is colliculus. And the bottom two, this is the one on this side, is the inferior colliculus. So these are brainstem structures, or excuse me, midbrain structures that are found only on the posterior aspect of the midbrain. So you'll have to turn the brainstem around from the front to see them. And what these guys do, their function is that they're responsible for coordinating reflexive actions to noise and visual stimuli. And by reflexive, I mean, imagine a time when there was a sudden sound behind you and you jumped and you probably also oriented towards the sound. And if you think about it, you probably didn't really have much choice in the matter. Your body kind of just did that. That is an example of one of the functions of these. So they're responsible for very, very, very basic instinctual responses to a sudden sound or sudden movement. So ancestrally, we can see why this would be useful. It would be good to notice sudden changes in our environment to do things like avoid predators, right? So if there is a crackling behind you in the bush, you might startle and then turn around to face it, which might help you survive a little bit better than somebody who was like, well, there was a noise, I sure don't care about it, and went about their business and maybe got eaten by a leopard or something. So that's what the function of the superior and inferior colliculus is to respond to visual stimuli, movements, or auditory stimuli reflexively. When I do the lecture presentation, I'll explain which one does which thing, but for the purposes of my lab, you just need to know identification of these and then generally what their function is. Okay, so let's zoom back out a little bit, and I'm going to flip this around. So at the front of the midbrain, or the side view really, you can see that there's just these long pieces of neural tissue that go from the pons up to the rest of the brain. So we're going to ignore this nerve for now. But these are the cerebral peduncles. There's one per side, so I guess this is just one of them, not two. So cerebral peduncle. Peduncle is a really fun word to say. What a peduncle really is in the context of neuroanatomy is a piece of neural tissue, usually primarily white matter, that is connecting one area of the brain to another area of the brain. So in this case, the cerebral peduncle is connecting the pons to the upstairs structures, including the diencephalon and the rest of the cerebrum above that, telencephalon stuff. So that's what a peduncle is. So let's erase that, and we'll kind of look at the front view of them, even though the optic chiasm and the pituitary gland are annoyingly in the way. But if I tilt this a little bit, you can see here's a cerebral peduncle, and here's one. Between them, we have the mamillary bodies. And then here's another one. So there's two, one per side. So these are little structures on the anterior portion of the midbrain, and interestingly, their appearance and their name both reflect their function. So mamillary refers to their appearance. They look kind of like breasts, and they are responsible for coordinating licking and sucking reflexes. So reflexive oral cavity behaviors, as you would see in infant nursing, for example. So you're born needing to do those things, not having been taught them because you're new. And so these are the little portions of the brain that are going to coordinate those reflexes so that a neonate can feed. Okay, so we're going to tilt this anteriorly. We're going to zoom out a teensy bit. So this area that I'm outlining is the pons. And so this is a brainstem region with lots of different connector pieces. It has peduncles that attach it to the cerebellum, for example, even though the cerebellum is not pictured here. It's a mixture of white matter and gray matter. So the gray matter is in nuclei inside of the pons. Remember, a nucleus in neuroanatomy is an island of gray matter surrounded by white matter. So if I were to cut the pons open, you can see some of those. So the pons contains nuclei that are important for things like respiration, your rate of respiration. There's also a pontine micturition center, so that's the thing that controls the reflex that allows you to urinate. So there's a lot of basic body function nuclei inside of the pons. So any of those would be an acceptable function. And then inferior most in this particular model, we have the medulla oblongata, which I'll outline. There. And then anteriorly on the front of the medulla oblongata, we've got these two kind of baseball bat-like structures, which are the pyramids. Of the medulla. So the medulla and the pons kind of work together to coordinate those basic body functions. So that's why, for example, brainstem injuries are so damaging and dangerous and life-threatening, is because a lot of your reflexive and very basic life functions, the ones that you don't think about, like breathing when you're asleep or other things of that nature, those are coordinated by actions of the pons and the medulla together. So if you damage your brainstem, you lose the ability to do those things, and that becomes a life-threatening problem in fairly short order. Among the important things that the medulla does, it also is a critical role in motor control, specifically as it relates to the pyramids, because these are a place where descending motor information, which I'll draw as coming down this way, enters the medulla in the pyramid, and then in most cases the axon of the motor neuron crosses over from one pyramid to another. We call this decussation of the pyramids, before descending to the correct side and innervating whatever muscle it innervates. So this is why the left side of your body controls, or the left side of your brain controls the right half of your body, and vice versa. A lot of that decussation, crossing over, happens in the pyramids. So that's why those structures are significant. Okay, so I'm running out of time because I got to start lab soon, but before we do, let's take a look at some of this sticky outy stuff. And I realize this looks like an alien. So this is the pituitary gland. Wow, that D did not turn out very well. Let's try that again. And then this little stalk that it hangs off of is called the infundibulum. These little guys that look like antennae are the olfactory bulbs. So ordinarily they would be positioned on the underside of the frontal lobe, and they sit right on top of the olfactory foramina of the ethmoid bone, on a thing called the cribriform plate. But in this case, there's no skull here, so you wouldn't see any of that, nor is there any frontal lobe to speak of. So you're not seeing it, but I just wanted to explain what all this weird stuff was. All right, so let's turn this. So the rest of these nubbins that you're seeing hanging off of here are cranial nerves. And so in the next video after this, I'll go through all of the cranial nerves. There is another video that contains cranial nerve information as well, using some neuroanatomy modeling. However, it's always nice to get multiple views of the cranial nerves, and this model has pretty good ones. So after I get done doing what I'm doing next, I will just take you through the cranial nerves in the following video. So now that you have a better idea of brainstem and midbrain structures, it'll be easier for you to do the cranial nerves because you'll know which landmarks are associated with which nerves, which is convenient. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Adios.